Hey, cinema aficionados, Dan Patton, Screen Magazine, thank you for checking in. Today, we are speaking with actor Phil Donlon, who this year joined the cast of Chicago Fire as Lieutenant Stephen Vale. And Philip is joining us from his home, I believe, in Los Angeles, where it may be nice, but it is probably not the 80 degrees and blue skies that we have in Chicago. So beat that, Donlon.
I can't beat it. It is heating up badly. It's another like 104 degrees. It's like Hades over here.
You want to give us a quick 2-minute elevator bio on where you're coming from?
Yeah, Phil Donlon, actor, producer. Started on the stages in Chicago with the Gilead Theater Company, which I was the artistic director of. I've been in LA for about 15 years. I've got a show I'm executive producing over at Fox on that end of my career. And then, of course, just joining the cast of Chicago Fire. So I think that's about it. You probably saw me on Power Book Force previously. It was another Chicago show. I played Simon McDougal.
Let's concentrate on Chicago Fire. Now,
yes.
Steven Vale, can you tell me, how does he fit into the whole Chicago Fire story?
Absolutely. I do have to be careful only because, fortunately, my character is so filled with spoilers. It's ridiculous. But he, where the season picks up, Dom Pascal, who's played by Dermot Mulroney, he comes from Miami with some sort of dark, mysterious past. He's trying to patch up his marriage with his wife. And then I'm his old pal, who we came up together in Chicago. And when I enter the picture, and what was teased in this last episode is while he and his wife were separated, she and I may have had a thing, possibly.
Aha. Okay.
So that was in this last episode. Dermot gave me a nice sort of punch in the stomach, knocked the wind out of me. So that's what happens when you mess with Dom Pascal's wife, apparently. But yeah, we're like old pals that came up together in Chicago.
In what way was getting punched in the stomach on Chicago Fire the crowning achievement of your career?
Well, because it was by Dermot, and I didn't know when I got cast on the show, I didn't know he was my scene partner. When I found out, I was like, oh my God, I'm like a massive fan of his from like Living in Oblivion and Zodiac, and like just such a fan of him as an actor.
And how was it to be on set with him? What were your expectations, and how were those exceeded when the camera started rolling?
He could not have been nicer, more down to earth, supportive as a scene partner. Just the whole entire, I gotta say, this is the nicest set I've ever been on in my life. And I've been on a lot of sets.
And as far as your character is concerned, how have you grown the character? How is he described on the script, and how has he evolved since, becoming embodied by an actual actor, specifically you?
I was borrowing from actors that I admire and performances that I admire a lot. There's this one, he's a buddy of mine, but Robert Patrick, the actor Robert Patrick, he was in this movie called Copland, James Mangold film. And what he did with his character in Copland, I was sort of like going kind of for that, and that's kind of how I shaped him. Sort of an edgy guy, a little bit of an edge to him. As Chicago as I could possibly go without being a caricature, trying to be like my, South Side uncles.
What other pleasant surprises did you encounter coming back to Chicago to film?
The fans of Chicago Fire, when we were on location, they were like fans that find out where you're shooting on location. They show up. They were very disappointed to see me, of course. They're like, huh, who's this guy? But they're really dedicated. So that was kind of cool. It was like a lot of fun to shoot on location around Chicago, Franklin Park, and these different areas. And this is where a lot of my aunts and uncles live and stuff. So I just thought it was kind of cool. I'm like, I'm cruising around in a transpo van with Dermot.
Yeah. What about your acting friends in LA when they hear that you're actually on Chicago Fire? Do they say, man, I hope someday that I can get on a show or a film that's being, produced in Chicago?
Everybody knows the show and loves it. They love it. I mean, actor friends of mine, who watch it. So, and even just, the lay people who are like, oh, would tell me my wife and I have been watching this show for almost the 13 years. I mean, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. It's cool to have people watch your work, Dan.
Well, and the nice thing about all the Chicago shows, all the characters have arcs.
Yeah.
What kind that Steven Vale may have, or you mentioned earlier spoilers. How much into the future do you know your character's story and the rest of the cast? Do they know what's going to happen?
Yeah, you kind of get it as the script shows up. I mean, I don't think even Dermot per se knows. I don't know what any of the other cast knows or not, but I know Dermot was sort of getting it as well. You're just sort of getting it as you get it.
You do know some spoilers, maybe?
I do know some spoilers, which I can't say, but they have said, Vale's going to be around this season. He's sticking around, and we're writing for Vale, because I'll have friends and family send me things, and there's been already some articles and some fan YouTube stuff where they're saying, hey, this storyline with Pascal and his wife and this Vale guy this is exciting, this is new, this is interesting. And I do know the writers did mention they're looking at it, expanding out the world of the characters. So I can tell you that.
The Dick Wolf shows, one of the brilliant things they do, you really, as a viewer, get emotionally invested in the bad guys and the good guys. Where does Lieutenant Stephen Vale, is he a villain? Is he a hero?
I don't know that Vale or Pascal are villains, other than they're old pals, and a woman has come between them, it looks like. So we'll see. It's funny. As I said, Vale is a guy, who's rough around the edges. And I sense that Pascal and Vale have a lot of friendly competition that has gone on between them over the years. So I'm excited to see that kind of play out. And I think both of us, and I think Pascal even now, I mean, people are talking about him like he's got a dark past. He's not what he seems to be. And I think that's what's interesting about this storyline. There's not a lot of answers. There's a lot of questions.
How do you make the transition? What is the difference in your approach from being on stage to being on camera?
I'm thinking back to all my theater in Chicago when I was a real actor, Dan. I would say, Dan, the biggest difference between stage and film is with stage, it's like, jumping out of a plane without a parachute, and you're just sort of free falling once the curtain goes up to when it goes down. There's no stopping and starting. So in film, you've got all of these distractions with like the sound guy and the makeup people, and they're all just doing their job. And being able to sort of block all of that out and get to a place where I feel like I'm on stage, so when they call action, I'm right in that place. And that's like a super difficult thing. And in doing it in these little tiny spurts, and then they say cut, and then I'm, sitting off to the side, drinking a soda with Dermot, and we're talking about golf.
Right.
Or whatever, So I think that's the hardest thing. Like, for example, I think the waiting around, one day I was up first, had a really early call at like 4 a.m. first scene of the day. And then I had like 6 or 7 hours, and then I wasn't shooting again until like the end. So it's like, how do you keep, and that's kind of different in a part of it. How do you, if you take a nap for 2 hours, how do you wake up and go, okay, well, now I'm getting back into this place. So it's like, I don't know, that to me would be the biggest difference.
What's the best thing a director can do to help everyone who's about to start acting, shed all those other, external influences and just get into character? Like, give a couple seconds, a couple beats, or say something.
When you come onto a show like Chicago Fire, at least this is how I feel about it. I want to always be perfect. I don't want to make their days longer than they have to. I would like to nail everything on the first take. So they're like, oh, that was brilliant. That's so you have all these notions, but I also think ultimately at the end of the day, the more you come into your own as an actor, you've also got to be selfish. So if you need the extra time, if you want an extra take, I mean, I think you got to read the room a little bit, but I think you demand those things. Like if you're not feeling good about something or you feel you're being rushed, it's your performance. And ultimately the directors and the producers want your best performance. So I think it's a little bit of a delicate balance. I mean, if you're a series regular that's been on the show for 13 years, you've earned that.
Now you're in LA. What do you miss the most when you're here in Chicago and you're performing for Chicago Fire? What you look around and think, wow, I wish I was still here. What makes you say that?
I would say the people for sure. I mean, to me, Chicago is the greatest city in the world. Obviously I'm biased, but the people, I mean, they're just, I don't know, they're the greatest people, I think. So, down to when I get picked up in the transpo van, because I'm talking to the transpo guy about the White Sox and the Cubs, it's like, it's cool. It's like really great. And
well, you
so
brought it up. Okay. This is a very controversial and you could get yourself in trouble. Sox or Cubs? Yeah. Let's have it.
Well, for sure, the White Sox, unfortunately.
When can our viewers see you next on Chicago Fire and the other thing you have going on with Fox?
Well, the Fox thing, again, in development as far as Chicago Fire. Yeah. So last 2 episodes, and then, tune in next week and the week after. And, you'll see me. The storyline of Lieutenant Vale continues.
And maybe he hopefully won't get punched again on one of the, or maybe he will. I mean, that could be an exciting thing.
I mean, it would be kind of nice to if Dermot got to be punched,
Spoilers.
Dermot kept requesting more takes. I'm not sure why. He's like, can we do that again? Not sure I quite got that.
Yeah, he's using his experience to make sure he gets what he needs.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
All right, actor Phil Donlon, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations with everything happening on Chicago Fire. This is Dan Patton with Screen Magazine. Everybody, thanks for checking in. We'll talk to you next time.